The minutes for the previous meeting are attached. Take a look, otherwise we'll have a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting.
I'll second. Okay. All in favor of accepting the minutes? Any objection?
Aye.
Excellent. So adopted. All right. Check out the correspondence log for things that have come in the last little bit. We'll talk about one or two of the items. Then we'll move right into the CMAC SEMSCO reports. Dr. Walker.
Yeah, I'll give a report, because during the meeting, Dr. Bart looked at my computer and said, "Oh, good, you're taking notes," and then he stopped.
And this is a meeting you were actually at.
I was at my
not trying to do it on Sparks.
That's correct. So, just a few things. The CMAC and SEMSCO was last week in Albany. During the Bureau report, they talked about the ambulance transfusion services, that there's progress being made, and that hopefully the new process for approving ATS services will be out at the next CMAC SEMSCO meeting. The CMAC and SEMSCO, we had been meeting for years, 3 times a year, and now it's going to go into 4 times a year for at least the next year or two to see if that helps progress things and move business along. So the next meeting will be March 10th and 11th in Albany. The state is working on updating the mutual aid policy, which should be updating soon, as well as the PLSFR policy, from what I understand. And for those of you that do Part 18 submissions for mass gatherings, those are going to be submitted electronically in the future as well. I think everybody's aware that all paramedic exams from this point forward will be computer-based testing. They will be offering computer-based testing for all levels. There will still be paper for other levels except for the paramedic exam. Those will all be on the computer going forward. As far as the practical skills exams for the paramedic stations, there will be Bureau personnel will be showing up with scenarios and paperwork very similar to, from what I understand, to National Registry type testing. Is that correct? There are some discussions, some other things about standards of excellence initiatives for agencies that will be coming forward. An RFP put out for some leadership training for EMS personnel. Vital signs will be in Saratoga, October 29th to the 1st. And May 17th will be EMS on tour, which is a public outreach area day for agencies to go out, meet with people in their community, and I believe the Bureau will be putting out some information and packets together to help stimulate those discussions and things prior to that date. So just something to put on your calendar. As far as actual business, there was some, from Med Standards to the CMAC, there were motions. The New York City put forth their unified protocols, which have taken the new BLS protocol updates and integrated them kind of in a different format into their protocols. These are unified, not our collaborative protocols. They're still on separate protocols, although they're much, much closer. And they did eventually pass. There was some good discussion about deviating from the state protocol. Really, they pretty much match up, except for maybe one minor area at this point. But those did pass. Mercy Point Central presented their protocols that were approved. Interestingly, in their protocols, they did have some procedures that are really for physicians, such as pericardiocentesis, finger thoracostomy, tube thoracostomy, arterial line placement. And those weren't really delineated in the actual protocols as to what level to do those. And that was thought to be confusing, so they were going in and putting in notes as to what those procedures could only be done by a physician. Their intent was not that those be provided by paramedics. That led to a little bit of a discussion, brief discussion on finger thoracostomies that have, I think, never been brought up to the CMAC and been discussed as appropriate for the scope of practice of paramedics in New York State. So there was a brief discussion on that, and probably would maybe be some support for something like that, but something that hadn't been discussed or approved at that body previously. The protocol development process for New York State was outlined and passed. It basically just says, here are time frames for when we put protocols together, when they'll be discussed, when they'll be posted for comment, revisions, with the goal of trying to roll them out at the same time every year, so that it's not we do a protocol rollout now, then we do another one in 6 months, but trying to hardware that process for time frames. And then there was a good discussion on the Wremac, not ours, thankfully. One of the Wremacs in the state had actually had some issues with the provider. They had taken some restrict their practice in the region, and that led to some legal issues and things. And what came out of it is that the Bureau policy on patient care restriction 1401 may not be, there may be some conflicts legally with what's in regulation and what Wremac can or can't do. So our patient care restriction policy from our Wremac actually mimics that a lot. And the advice from the Bureau at this point, as they're revising that policy, is to follow it up until the point where Wremac would take action to restrict someone's ability to practice, and at that point, to get the Bureau involved, because since the Bureau and the Department of Health are the ones that issue cards, they're the only ones that can then technically restrict them. Now, that does not mean that an agency medical director cannot take a provider offline, which the agency medical director still has the ability to do and can do, and certainly we can refer that if an action is taken to the Wremac, so all medical directors in the region are aware of that to make their own decision about whether a provider or not should be online. But that agency medical director could take action to restrict a provider from being online, and the Bureau could take their card away, but the Wremac itself cannot put any restrictions or sanctions on it. Is that
Spot on.
all right? So nothing that we need to do about that now, but when the new policy comes up on the road, we need to look at revising ours. Then the only other thing I'm going to cover here, but instead of down a little bit later, is on the collaborative protocols. We had a meeting after the CMAC that day, and there were just a couple of things, questions that people had, and things that, just to clarify between the state module, the rollout for the protocol and that, there were some questions on nitroglycerin. I think it says somewhere in there that not to be concerned about if they're on any erectile dysfunction medications and that. The intent wasn't that we should not consider those medications or that it's not a contraindication or a caution anymore. The advice was just that we should always be aware of potential for hypertension when giving nitroglycerin. And I think we know from the ERs that we potentially probably give it to a lot of people without asking if they're on one of those medicines. So the intent was not to say it's not a contraindication, but just to say always be concerned for hypertension. That got a little mixed up in the educational rollout. In the patella reduction module, the state rollout said that they would have considerable pain, and the pain medicine should be given first prior to doing a patellar reduction, and that of course isn't true. And the discussion there was that the procedure itself is a method of treating the pain and should not be delayed. The procedure should not be delayed waiting for ALS to get through medications. And the last, I think, was that for Altes and Bruis, that was really intended for patients under 2, and I think that was highlighted in the lecture from the state. There was one other thing, also the 3.5-hour time frame for strokes was kind of the default in the state protocols, but the discussion, of course, is that depending on your regional comprehensive stroke centers, their capabilities, their time frames, that a region may extend those hour time frames depending on what resources they have available to them. So I think that's it. Unless anybody has any questions or anything else to add.
The chairman report, so it looks like we have Wremac rep changes in Suburban, Dr. McNamara and Dr. Lynch. The only other thing that I've got on, that I'm not going to cover later is any of the physicians in the Wremac that are interested in nerding out a little bit and wearing a patch that's specific to physicians. We had some made up a couple of years ago that mimic the New York State EMS patch, and instead of saying EMT or paramedic on the bottom, they say physician. So if anybody's interested in those, they're $5. They're for me. They are in the regular navy and also tactical black. The $5 is just recouping my cost. I don't make any money off of it. So if you're interested, shoot me an email or catch me some other way. Okay, Beth, trauma advisory committee.
We don't have any report today.
Nice and easy. Bruce or anyone else with Nurse Advisory Committee? Okay, moving on to program agencies. Lake Plains.
Good afternoon. So over the holidays, we had a couple of classes that we put on. We had a CIC class. Unfortunately, we only had 3 people in it, but we still ran it to get those instructors into the system. We also did a trauma-informed care class at the office where we actually partnered with Southwest Region and did our first distance learning with them on that class, which seemed to be pretty successful. We also had an instructor update at the end of the month of December. They brought in 30 some odd instructors to research some of the, or satisfy some of the requirements for researching their instructor status. A host of EMS classes are going on. In addition to the ones I have on the schedule, I just got notified today that NTRIP's also going to be doing an EMT hybrid course starting February 24th. They're transitioning a lot of their courses into a hybrid format. With that said, we actually just ran our first AEMT hybrid course, which had 23 people and only 6 failed from that. So we'll continue to monitor that and see if we get any continuing improvements. The only approvals we are requesting is Corfu. Fire is looking to go to EPCR, and Stafford Fire is requesting CPAP. Just want to remind everybody that at Lake Plains, we have a 100% online singing program where we partnered with the MS1 Academy at a lower rate. So any of the agencies in the Niagara Genesee or Orleans County region that are interested, just reach out to us. Other than that, I don't have very much.
Okay. Steph?
My reports included the agenda. Biggest things we held were quite a few distance learning trainings. We did one for responders dealing with autistic patients. We did an RSI in the pediatric patient with Mercy Flight. We held an ITLS refresher course. We had a personal injury lawyer come in and talk about litigation issues that could involve EMS, and we started normal Narcan and stop-the-bleed trainings. We did receive our 2 high-fidelity simulation mannequins a couple weeks ago, and they'll be taken out of the box tomorrow. So we're excited to start being able to use that from an ARC grant that we received. Some upcoming events on Friday there's the CMS ambulance cost data collection seminar that Onion and a couple other agencies are putting on. I know we have quite a few agencies in our region that were selected to report to CMS in this first round, and it's going to be quite a burden to them. CMS has also said that all agencies that bill will be required to do this sometime in the next 5 years or so. And we have our spring conference coming up at the end of March.
Thanks. UVMD?
Report also included in the packet, a couple of highlight points on here. We're going to be starting the process, most likely the early part of next week, of re-vetting the skills that our medical director approved skills for services within the region. And so here's what that means. You're approved for a certain level, and then you have all of these different add-on things that you get approved for by your medical director. And that can change, so a paramedic service, out of 15 possible skills that they could do, and I'm making that number up, but out of 15 possible skills, not all paramedic services may do those 15 skills. And so this issue tends to surface every year as we get into credentialing, because the way that the portal works is if you have providers who don't have skills documented for each of those things by level, it actually will take them offline because they didn't, or drop them to the next appropriate level automatically that they would be eligible for. And so it results in conversations with agencies of why is this provider offline, and then you explain to them it's because they didn't do all of their skills for a given level, and then they tell you, well, we stopped doing CPAP 4 years ago. Okay, that's great, but there's appropriate notifications that need to happen. So we're tying this into, with the new credentialing, the updated credentialing policy rather, that reflects the new skill set that corresponds with the collaborative protocols, and then also the statewide skills. We're going to tie all this into one, so that as people are into the heart of credentialing season that we'll be into here within the next month and a half, 2 months, all of that information is going to be fresh. That might sound like a small task, and I'm not trying to make it seem like it's impossible, but we are going to have to probably channel this through the medical directors, because to expect 107 agencies to respond in a short period of time and then have to validate that with the medical directors. What my thought is at this point is that we're going to reach out to each of the medical directors, say here's your agencies, here's their levels, are there any of the skills at that level that you don't want them to do, and then we'll work it kind of the back way with the agencies and make sure that they're then looped in on any large things. So it is going to be a little bit of a heavy lift, but I think it's going to be worth it because it's going to help give us a nice clean slate moving forward, and it's going to really help to make sure that the information that we have in the portal remains as current as possible. So if you're going to be hearing from me shortly on that, and when you do, that's what I'm reaching out to you for. We've already begun the process of evaluating Wremac preceptors that are in the Wyoming area region. Prior to this update process, we had 384 preceptors on the books for our 2-county region. It's really a lot. And we had been getting requests saying that they were looking for preceptor courses, and based on conversations that we've had here, we were kind of reluctant to do that just because we don't, and not we, what this committee has expressed previously is that you don't want everybody in every agency to be a preceptor because it kind of undermines the integrity of the program. And so we are in the process of cleaning that up. The round one was that we just sent a communication out via survey to all of the existing preceptors. It was a 5-question survey that if it took them 45 seconds to complete, there was something seriously wrong. But it really just captured whether they were interested in continuing as a preceptor or not. We had 87 who didn't respond to the survey request. I've since reached out to those 87 and figuring that maybe there was a link that went to junk mail or something like that, and re-invited them personally from my email account, not from SurveyMonkey. We've already heard back from a number of those. So my guess is out of the 225 that responded saying they wanted to continue as a Wremac preceptor, my guess is we'll probably have 35 or 40 more who are going to say that. So we're still going to be just shy of 300 preceptors. So the last step of what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the agencies where these preceptors are affiliated, and I'm essentially going to scatter them on a map to look where they're located agency-wise to find out, are there really holes within our coverage area for preceptors. So I'll be coming back to you. We should be closed out by March. I don't anticipate running any preceptor courses prior to our March meeting, just because I think it's going to take these last couple of steps, that period of time to close that out. But I don't want to delay it because if there truly are agencies that are in need, we're into credentialing season, and I want to make sure that they have the resources to be able to do this. So, and as we have in years past, we've always worked with agencies who really demonstrate that they have a need. You already talked about Dr. McNamara being approved by the Regional Council as a member. The Bureau, I don't think, Dr. Walterson, I don't think this was in your report, but I just want to make sure we covered it. The Bureau of Narcotics Enforcement has mentioned that there is protected health information that's being turned over to the Bureau with their controlled substance reports. So agencies are sending in PCRs with their controlled substance reports, and the BNE wants to make it very clear, do not do that. Retain those records in-house. Only submit what you're supposed to submit. Make sure that you're not submitting PHI to the Bureau. Keep it all in-house. The last thing from the BLS protocol update, we've been getting information from the Bureau on compliance, and we're doing better than I would have expected. But out of the air ambulance that we have, they responded, so they're 100% compliant. The first response service, we have 42 in our region, 21 have responded, saying that they are in compliance. That's 50% of them. And then on the ground ambulances, we have 67 in the Wyoming area region. and 23 of them, so 34% have responded. So that information is as of last Friday, the 17th. And so that, we'll have a better sense within the next, I would think, 2 weeks, because we hear from agencies daily about the work. So other than that, that is my report.
All right, anything new on the collaborative from Dr. Walden?
Nope, not other than what I mentioned already.
So the QI subcommittee, we'll just mention this now under new business. Dr. Youngberg has requested to be released from his position as the coordinator, the chair of the QI subcommittee. The Wremac thanks him for his time in the position and would be interested in entertaining other positions that would like to assume that role. If you're interested, you can feel free to say so now, or be a little more anonymous and contact me or Karen offline, and we can figure that out. If there's more than one person interested, then we'll figure out how to make the selection. Excuse me. Ad hoc cardiac arrest field termination. Scott, are we here on the phone? No? Hi.
Still waiting for the Duke from the information we sent out to you guys to circulate amongst the docs.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm just waiting to get review to get that pushed out.
Sounds good. I think probably by the March meeting, we can get that circulated and talked about and have some decisions made.
Okay.
All right, thanks. Old business policy review, and talking again about the medical direction policy that we discussed last month. Policy updates. There's really nothing new other than kind of touching base with Dr. Borton about what we discussed last 2 months ago. Anything new?
So, when I proposed this last month, I think or 2 months ago, I think I came down, it might have seemed a little bit harsh in terms of the EMS side. Like paramedics and EMTs were purposefully, calling one place for medical direction and then not liking the answer they got, so they were calling somewhere else. I don't think that's necessarily the case that our pre-hospital care providers are going out shopping for the piece of medical direction advice that they want. I think a lot of it is actually coming down from the physician side, where a physician might be hearing about this train wreck of a patient that might be coming their way, and they're then saying, go somewhere else. And I think part of the problem might stem from the way as a Wremac, as a region, that we've approached the education on giving medical direction over years. I know the last time, we talked about the base station course, which is, I believe it's still provided for our residents.
It is.
On a yearly basis. And the last time I took that course was last millennium. But
Literally.
So, and I've gotten word that not every provider, and when I say provider, I'm talking about physician and APP in the region that's picking up that medical direction line, might not have necessarily received that training. And I don't always think that we've gone out and said, had invitations for the 8 counties to say, oh, we're doing the medical director base station course on the state, come on in. So I think to make sure that, there's the online medical direction policy, I think for all of us to get on the same page, I briefly talked with Mike and also to Scott about using the new learning management system, and at some point setting up, Mike and I will work on giving a lecture which will make open to members of the 8 counties in terms of physicians or APPs to come in and then hear the lecture live. And then we'll have that lecture taped and available on the LMS system, so, you know, physicians or APPs could log into that and get, you know, some credit hours for CME for that, and then we can keep a list. You know, because I know in more rural areas, you know, up in Medina, down in Springville, especially on overnights, you don't have a physician answering that phone. And I think we need to get all on the same page from a provider side, and then we could go forward with really instituting a policy, and we could also, you know, provide some brief education for the pre-hospital care providers. So I will work with Mike. We'll try and pull some of the old stuff from the medical direction course, and we'll work on getting something together in the next couple of months for that.
Thank you, sir.
Oh, one other thing, Mike.
Yeah.
I'm not sure in the bylaws. So when I went to the policies and procedures, they talked about taking to be a agency medical director, you had to have taken the base station course.
Mhm.
So if someone's not an agency medical director for a, you know, a fire department, is it somewhere in the bylaws that states that they do have to take the course?
It's in the medical director policy.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, you have 1 year to take it.
Okay, because I must have missed that.
Yeah, I think it's policy specific.
It's on the
medical
policy
records.
page. Yeah.
Medical direction application.
Mentioned it's one of the possible
Yeah. It's in one of them, I don't know which one it is, though. All right, that's sooner.
95-2.
Yeah, I just put that, thank you.
I know that, I believe it's the files.
This is Josette. You might have to look back to the 1990s for that policy. The other thing too, I remember there was an addenda at some point in time that said you get, I think, 6 months to a year, maybe a year from starting employment, before you actually had to get base station certified.
So those are two different issues. One is related to providing medical direction in the emergency department.
Right.
Via the phone, radio, whatever. And the second part is being a medical director for a service, but I'm not seeing it in 1 year. Because
The only reason I remember that is because the base station class at that time was happening once a year, so we figured when people, they could get it within a year. But Dr. O'Brien, I don't know if I sent it to you yet, but I will, as I think I mentioned, Rochester has a Wremac online base station course.
Mhm.
It's very Rochester specific, so we have to do our own.
Sure.
But don't reinvent the wheel,
That's, sounds like a good idea. I'd like, I'm in the process of kind of revising the one that UVMD has been doing for the residents and the fellows every year, and the pediatric fellows. And then I'd like to incorporate the relevant parts of that, and then we can kind of add anything.
We had a medical control policy that used to say base station course in a year, and maybe we were updating things, maybe it got pulled off the website.
We'll dig a little more.
When did Walter sue the Wremac? What year was that? I think it was around that time.
It's not you, it's
No, not
it's
Walter.
his father.
it was probably not 99, 2000.
Yeah, that's when I'm thinking this language was added in that.
Walter Ryan.
Yeah, so I think that's something we need to do, and either update the policy like that.
Yeah.
Article 30 does say that Wremacs can approve physicians to give medical direction.
web-based version of this that's available,
Yeah.
that, to me, seems like it becomes a moot point, because if you can sit at home at 2 o'clock in the morning and take the online version of the base station course, and that's sufficient, there's no reason that somebody should be without it.
Right.
The EMS service director, or even giving medical direction in the emergency department.
Right. Agreed.
I think it would be helpful if the docs and providers that are answering the med phone took it for the hospital.
They're supposed to have it.
Yeah.
That there shouldn't be, theoretically, there should not be any position in an emergency department giving medical direction without this. And I lived this when this was rolled out in the, when REMS was the program agency days, because ECMC had a couple of physicians who were not permitted by this organization to provide medical direction because they hadn't taken the base station course, and that was before we even knew what an LMS was or online learning.
Right.
And so I know it's come up that there's physicians who are in departments who don't have this.
I'm certain there's
So-
many that are answering that phone. Perhaps begrudgingly, but answering the phone without having gone through that training.
So policy 1995-2 says the physician must be licensed in New York State, must complete a base station course or equivalent as approved by the Wremac, and must meet one of the following qualifications: actively work in Article 28 ER, maintain current board certification in emergency medicine, maintain current board certification in EMS, and currently providing EMS medical direction under Wremac policy 1995-2 at the time of this revision.
But that's for a service.
That's for a service
Yeah,
medicine.
that's why I didn't.
Right.
So we'll have to look at that option.
And we might need to clarify a little bit too, through those things, because I don't think we're doing anybody favors to have people that aren't really sure what they're supposed to be doing when they answer the phone. It doesn't put them in a good position, nor the crews that are calling for direction.
Mike, and I think,
Please.
I agree with what Dr. Borton said, and I think if I can jump ahead just in the new business, this medical control from Shy item, some of the agencies have been complaining that evidently in calling Shy that they've been told that they can't give medical direction to sign off pediatric patients there, and I think again, that this may help clarify some of those things about what is appropriate and what's not appropriate for medical direction. I think in calling the pediatric center and say, well, you can't sign somebody off, which was clearly spelled out in Wremac policies for when you have to call, sign off the child, there's some controversy there that needs to be figured out.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard the same. I haven't gotten, I don't have specific dates or times or, positions that are giving. I've heard it from multiple people. But without, recordings or dates or times, it's tough for me to really know how widespread it is. It's something that kind of comes up now and again. And it's something I'm actually going to get in touch with them and clarify this particular issue, but I agree with them. It speaks to the larger issue as well. Bylaws review, which actually brings us to the next item under old business that's not actually written there because it's just a time-honored old business with a leadership retreat. I actually just like minutes ago, emailed Karen the email that's going to be sent out to the program agencies and to the regional council chairs to pick a date in February to sit down and have our bylaw review as we're supposed to according to our bylaws, and a leadership meeting. So once we get that scheduled, I'm hoping to have it in February and have it before the March meeting, so we can actually talk about how it really occurred and people showed up and we talked about stuff. So keep an eye out for that. That'll go out later today with doodle polling to try to get a day settled. Moving on to SCP and critical care protocols. Thank you to all of you who emailed me expressing your interest. The day after the first email went out, and then the day after the second email went out, I heard from Dr. Bart at CMAC that this is actually now a CMAC level thing, where they're talking about trying to work on statewide facility and specialty care transport protocols. I don't think that needs to negate our group of people that are interested. I think we should get together, at least online, and have a discussion about our regional concerns and what we want to make sure gets addressed. So that way I can relay it through Dr. Bart, and Dr. Tanaka is also going to be participating with me on that technical advisory group that think, what we'll do is I'll send an email out in the next couple of days, and we can start talking about what we have historically and what we want to make sure is addressed and what concerns we have, so we can get fed up the chain and the state can talk about it as as the tag is starting to do its work at the CMAC level. So thank you, and I'll be in touch soon. I did get everyone's emails the last couple of days, so thanks. I apologize for anybody that I've forgotten, and we'll move forward together. Let's see, I believe it's for free, cool. This is the collaborative protocol update on education. We had tabled at the Wremac level for some time. I sort of feel like at this point, leaving it up to the programming, or excuse me, to the individual agencies about what update resource they'd like to use is reasonable since we've already passed the deadline and people have had to do that anyway. So I don't know that there's much purpose in us trying to make any kind of approval of anything at this point, unless somebody is different.
We need to give some type of a written directive because we've issued one that said don't do anything.
All right, fair enough.
That was under Brian's.
Got it.
So we should put something out that at least says, as a region, we're leaving it up to the agencies, and here's some resources. Because there's a couple of videos that are out there that Dr. Daly did, one that Dr. Fulgar did, and there's also an errata sheet that's out there that goes through and explains what the differences are. But if we want to leave the operationalizing of how an agency ensures that all of its providers, ALS providers, completed that, that's fine. But we should formalize that in form of a memo.
So I think we have to look at two things, right? So, and Tom, maybe you can clarify, I believe that it's the Bureau position that going forward, every new EMT will do the ALS protocol update from the state, correct? Correct. So really, we're just talking about what we do for ALS providers.
Yeah, I think sending out a memo that has a list and even links to here are the resources that are currently out there that are being used that meet the minimum, would meet the minimum, and then it's up to agencies to decide how to implement that. I think it's reasonable. But I agree, we should have some follow-up that since we said hold the courses and then said nothing. So maybe we can get together and draft something and get out the next week or so. Ready? Any other old business that may or may not be on the agenda? Super. New business, so we already thanked Dr. Youngberg for his service as the QI chair. You're interested in letting me know. So the ACLS, PALS, ITLS online courses, there have been some discussion about whether or not, the online.
I'm going to talk to Rob on this one.
All right, so the courses that have like an online component and require skills in person versus ones that don't have an online skill. Can you refresh my memory on the
So
discussion on-
currently AJ has a online version and could move forward. You can do it online, which I've taken some in the past, and they're pretty comprehensive. I mean, they don't delineate the process behind the skill itself, but then you have to go into a approved center or site for HA and validate the skills that you would normally do in the classroom portion of it.
Okay.
The big thing lately is that currently for PALS and ACLS, we have HA as the only approved provider, and Red Cross has come up with their own version. So, I don't know, I have not had any pushback on that from providers yet, but I expect as more information gets out here that Red Cross has this, that we're going to get more pushback from the providers.
We did have one inquiry from one of our agencies that would have the ability to offer that training outside of the AHA, because it's not an AHA program. So it does open it up a little bit to those qualified by the Red Cross to do that. And we have a service that would qualify for that.
Okay. And my understanding is that this course is still used the same AHA guidelines for ECC, yeah, the ECC courses too.
I think there's other courses too, that other than Red Cross that still have a skills component, which I think is the thing we've talked about in the past.
Right.
But do follow AHA guidelines, and so following the same standard and you're ensuring the skills portion, and that was what we discussed as wanted to ensure previously.
I think it's also reasonable to liken the pediatric courses that this body has approved outside of AHA, such as PEP and those other different offerings. So this strikes me as a very similar idea.
I mean, this would be, basically, we would just be amending our credentialing policy to allow that for those courses. I think that's a reasonable thing to do, as long as there's, the language in it, there's skills components, and that they, be substantially similar to where they meet, the AHA guideline, or use the AHA guideline, maybe it's perfectly fine.
Does the American Red Cross course, does that have, they have separate guidelines, or they teach the AHA guidelines?
I have not taken the course, and I'm not familiar with it. I've been trying to reach out and see if I can get information on it.
Because our policy does say CPR training courses must meet the current AHA guidelines for emergency cardiac care. It doesn't say that has to be only an AHA certification.
Well, let's see, so ACLS has to be from the AHA, PALS has to be from the AHA, but we also approved EPC or PEP, the advanced levels for the pediatric courses. And then trauma is HTLS, ITLS, I think that's still reasonable. Training must meet or exceed guidelines established by Bureau Policy 1107. Intended for healthcare providers that issue a completion card and have a skills verification session. It must meet the current AHA guidelines for ECC. So the way I read that, it sounds like that the Red Cross course for at least CPR would count without us having to change anything. There are other, like there's EACLS and other ACLS courses that we would have to consider. I might propose that we address this in March and actually get a list of, what the requirements are, so we can talk offline a little better to make sure that we're being inclusive of the courses that we would realistically expect, and have our language such that it's, we don't have to redo this every time somebody comes out with a course that is going to meet these requirements. Does that make sense?
So probably what we should always try to do is parallel with what the state is doing. And
Fair.
Don has, who's looking this up here?
The way we listed it in the new CME manual, just so that we cover exclusive or, globally, was national continuing education programs such as ACLS, ETLS, PALS. We didn't specifically say AHA or Red Cross, I think we outside of that.
Okay.
And just for a second piece, the military transitioned over to American Red Cross from AHA, and my understanding, I've not personally taken those yet, but my understanding is they're identical.
Okay, I mean, I actually like that language. I think it's delightfully vague. It's, but in a way that's going to work for us, and not work against us. So, and I agree with, not reinventing the wheel. So that might be the way we go, but let me, read a little more and we'll talk offline, and hopefully in March we'll make a decision, dispose of the issue. Okay, moving down, tranexamic acid discussion and original protocol.
So I was asked to bring this up a little bit within the TXA. For a long time, we haven't, I guess historically, we haven't used it in this region very much, or even across the state, because there's been some pushback from statewide, not just regionally, from the trauma physicians, and that's why it eliminated in the collaborative protocols in that. But now, ITLS, which a lot of agencies use, is their trauma course, is revised statement about that with the crash 3 data and maybe use of head injuries. And so the discussion was if ITLS has updated their policy recommending it, should we be looking at policy either regionally or in the collaborative protocols. In discussions in Albany, it seems like there's still a lot of regions across the state, Rochester, Albany, Syracuse, where the trauma doctors are not consistently using TXA or supportive of its use. My understanding, and you would know better, or Dr. Clemency perhaps, that the trauma physicians of Buffalo seem to be more open to it these days. I don't know.
I think this is, I think this is another case of kind of EMS sort of when we sold it. And, you know,
Maybe
TXA
we use it now.
Right. TXA, you know, we had a lot of questions at the beginning, and Beth, you know, might have good insight as to, you know, what the reception is to TXA from Mercy Flag, because we, you know, cheated by having the nurse get it. And you know, we haven't had any, on our end, we haven't had any cases where there was any concern about, you know, problems having given it or complications down the line. Beth, do you have anything off the top of your head that you might want to share?
I can say that it is more readily accepted than it had been in the past. There's definitely varying opinions amongst the surgeons. I think one of our biggest challenges is full communication and then remembering on our side, oh, second dose got to be given, blah, blah, blah. There's a continuum. It's not just what they get in the field, then they got to follow up in-house. And depending on what happens, that may or may not fully happen.
Yeah, I've seen cases where the communication about that was broke down a little bit. You know, I've also had, anecdotally, I've also had cases of, I think it is trickling down, and people are, even if not entirely in favor, are less opposed, perhaps. You know, I'm having now senior surgery residents that are actually, you know, when we get a pre-notification, they're actually asking if Mercy Flight's giving the TXA or if we should get it ready. So I think we're still kind of.
I think as time goes on, it definitely, it'll be a slow.
Yeah. I mean, I think if Crash 3 showed anything, I mean, it showed a couple things, but one of the things I think it showed quite strongly is that it's still not harmful. So I don't know that we're in any more danger looking at the results of that. And it's still inexpensive, and so, you know, I can say Mercy Flight's not planning to change that policy anytime soon, and I think it would be a reasonable thing for us to consider. There are other Wremacs in the state that do use TXA, so the fact that it's not a formulary net of collaboratives is not the end-all be-all. I think it would be worth entertaining a discussion about it.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, you could debate the data from Crash 2 or Crash 3 and how much of a significance or benefit there is, and it probably is not harmful. And now that you don't have to worry about the head injuries, I mean, because these are probably common patients we worried about a lot. We do have head injuries, and so there was always that concern of giving TXA before. Now that that's been alleviated, I don't see why we shouldn't do it. I don't know that, you know, I think this is something that if we had a regional policy for it, would allow agencies to consider it. I don't know that every agency would want to, and I think, quite honestly, I think you can make an argument, you know, is there any data showing that giving it 25 minutes earlier in the field makes a difference versus in the ER? And there's not. But, you know, especially in the rural areas where there's a lot of variation in who may be staffing that ER or their background in trauma, there may be more of a role for that, perhaps even than in, you know, closer to the city, too. It might be something to consider, because they may be going to a hospital an hour and a half away, there for a couple hours, and then getting transferred to a trauma center and outside that 3-hour window. And this may be a chance for us to drive some good practice from the field in those areas, potentially. So I don't know that every agency would need to do it, or I don't want to see this, we don't want this to, you know, delay patients on scene in trauma. We certainly want to go to the trauma center quickly, so a lot of it has to come out through education. But I don't know if there's a reason that we should say we shouldn't allow it or pursue it. You know?
It's not just for trauma patients too, though. I mean, we're also using it for messaging and
Sure.
And so, we haven't had any issues with it so far. And so, and I know from other agencies that was part of a different state, and they use it
I
successfully.
mean, massive technical hemorrhages.
Yep.
Absolutely.
One of the first places that did came from. I think, you know, I think it would be reasonable as, you know, we're talking about allowing, you know, the expansion of the use of TXA to services interested in caring, and, you know, to provide some guidance or even some education on how they can help the hospitals they're delivering patients to, you know, understand, because they say, oh, they got a gram of TXA, and the hospital may say, great, and not even realize there's a follow-up dose to give, or what that dose is, or whatnot. Particularly if they're going to deliver to a non-trauma center with the maybe they're unstable with the expectation of a transfer to ECMC or Strong. You know, that would be a missed opportunity if they sit there and look at a second dose or whatever.
Yeah, most of the patients involved in transfer don't get to us in time.
Yeah, and that makes, I mean, I believe that, for sure.
do ask though, if it does move forward, that, it goes to the RTAC to, at least for discussion.
Yeah, I think that would be, I mean, I think this is, you know, I'm all about driving change, but I think we should drive change with the stakeholders that are gonna be affected by those changes. So as we, you know, get closer to putting something together, I think the next step would be to submit that to RTAC and see what thoughts you have, and then get together and maybe, I don't know if the March meeting may be a little ambitious, but.
Our RTAC meeting is actually in March as well, the
Okay.
next one, we typically meet 3 times a year.
Okay, so then maybe May, we can do it, and then if we can get it to you in time to talk about our RTAC. Okay, any other thoughts? Very good. CLI and CIC is Wremac preceptors?
Yeah, did you skip over the channel?
Oh, yes, I did, even though it's circled. All right, so, med direction via OSHI, particularly for pediatric sign-offs, has been a challenge. Again, anecdotally, I have data, I don't have meaningful daily times. My plan coming into this meeting was to actually have to reach out to Michelle Penhue and kind of get the gauge, like where it's coming from, and is this actually officially like a directive that people have gotten, or, you know, is this something that just kind of has reared its head again and people are doing it? Because to me, you know, deciding appropriate sign-off is incumbent on taking medical direction. Did you have your hand up just now?
No, Ben Casper's here.
Oh, okay.
I'm the new injury prevention.
Hey, Ben, how are you?
Hi.
Thanks for coming.
Well, it's good to be here. I actually got a chance to hear the recordings in question, and it was regarding last week. And the main confusion, well, first, I believe a resident answered the phone, who probably shouldn't have done that. But he has been spoken to. I talked to Dr. Killian, and pretty much some of the frustration is that they're getting phone calls from the pre-hospital care, and they're not necessarily asking for advice. They're asking for permission to sign somebody off who fits the parameters, being like having a GCS of 15 and say stable vital signs, or I think the event in question was somebody had a home delivery and there was some somebody called 911, EMS arrived, the baby had an APGAR scale of 10, and a score of 10, and the mom didn't want the child to go get evaluated, but was going to be going to the midwife. So they had a plan, everything looked good, so the doctor was a little confused because asking for advice based off of a pre-hospital assessment. You know, instead of asking for like, you know, treatment options for a complex case or something like that. So I guess there was some frustration because pre-hospital a lot of times is calling, but they're trying to just maybe hand liability over based off their assessment, but it's their judgment, you know, so that's why I think it has to do with some liability issue. The verbiage that was used on the phone, though, that person hasn't been spoken with, I guess.
Okay. I mean, this, you know, and this is, I was unaware of that specific case. Sure.
Yeah, so I think the discussion at the Wremac level predates the most recent case that you've alluded to. You know, I think it comes down to when crews call the hospital, there is an abnormal situation and they're looking for help and guidance. And not speak to any singular hospital, but we need to help with them, and we need to be as helpful as possible in those situations. There may be a case where the providers that are on scene are overwhelmed with a situation that the physicians don't feel is overwhelming, but they're concerned, or there is a red flag in the provider's head, and so we need to be as supportive as possible about that. The other thing that I would say is if the physician at any site feels uncomfortable listening to the case through the provider's eyes, the best thing for them to do is say, can I please speak to the patient, or may I please speak to the parents of the child? And I frequently do that, not because I don't trust the provider, but because it gives me another perspective of what's going on in the case, and sometimes gives me another chance to convince the patient to go to the hospital, which might be what the provider does in the first place. But I just, no matter what the site is, it's not acceptable for hospitals to want to give medical direction for some calls, but not others. We need to have a system where hospitals are either 100% in the medical control system, or we need to discuss options to allow hospitals to get out of the medical control system. But if they're in, they gotta be in. And I don't, please, I don't want my comments to be addressed to any one hospital or any one situation, but rather I think this is the overall direction we need to go as a region.
I think in terms of specifically the phenomenon of discussing sign-offs, the concern about, liability. I mean, there's liability in everything an emergency physician does. And I think this is one of the areas it's incumbent on us to help crews sort things out. And, I'm not an attorney and I'm not a judge, but, the data about, liability from people providing medical direction over a phone, is that there's not a lot. I mean, it's seldom that a medical director is held responsible, or a physician is held responsible for providing online medical direction via telephone, except in a couple weird cases where like the hospital owns the ambulance company and things like that. I agree with Dr. Clemency that I think, any hospital that wants to have a med direction line needs to fully be in and commit to doing that. And, if a crew, calls for a sign-off, there are criteria by which they're supposed to call abnormal vital signs and things of that nature. And I also, I know Dr. Tanaka also uses that opportunity to talk to patients themselves and get a recording of me saying, here are my concerns, and get a recording of them saying, I hear you and I want to stay home. That's incumbent on us to help these crews. So if there are specific issues that come up, we're happy to try to offer, our opinion and guidance on maybe the best course of action going forward in the future. But I think, from the Wremac perspective, anybody that has a line needs to be willing to provide a full spectrum of medical direction for crews that are calling. And if they don't want to do that, I completely respect it, and we'll find an alternative. Again, this is not unique to OSHI. This has happened at other hospitals, and this is, I think, the position we should take for the entire region.
Mike, I think you're absolutely right. I think that whether somebody calls asking for permission to do something based on their assessment protocol, something they're required to call, or their direction to give in the protocols, or whether they're asking for advice, that's a continuum of that medical consult, medical direction, or whatever you want to call it, all names for the same thing. But that's what medical direction is there for, to provide that assistance to our providers when they need it. I think if we have state protocols and collaborative protocols and Wremac policies that say you have to call medical direction for specific instances, and then we have doctors on the line that are giving a mixed message and saying, well, I can't help you in this instance, I think that's a very poor disservice to our EMS providers. I'll just leave it there. But I think if these issues come up, I think we need to look at it a little bit more closely.
I agree, and I think we can also, as we revise the base station course and make it more widely available and easily accessible, that going forward, I think will contribute to any problems related to conversations on medical direction lines. Hopefully, will diminish somewhat as we increase everyone's shared understanding of what the responsibilities of picking up that phone are.
Mike, this is just offering a little input.
Please.
Part of the difficulty, there's a little inconsistency on when people answer the phone at children's, and a little bit of misunderstanding. So I think that your original idea, maybe to meet with Dr. Penhue, meet with Dr. Killian as well, just so they are able to present sort of a consensus. First of all, offering some of the things that we've just shared right now about the Wremac. Because when I've spoken to people individually through the dialogue, I think there's a bit of a misunderstanding. They also had someone who offered some legal guidance there who had no idea about EMS law and about obligations of EMS positions. So I think that that's probably a useful thing to get together in a meeting with them so that they can present it back to their staff.
I appreciate that. Yeah, that was my original plan. I think I'll continue to go ahead with that. I'll make sure I include Jeremy as well. Thanks. Any other thoughts on this item?
No, I would just, my final thought is whatever we do going forward, I just want to make sure that it's not individual hospital specific or individual event specific, but rather is a standard that is universally understood to be the standard throughout the region. I think that's important. We certainly don't want to be focusing on one single hospital or one single event.
Nope, I'm just gonna follow
Yeah, and
up.
Brian, I echo that, because we originally, it's decades ago, but we had this problem with a whole group, of a big group of hospitals, that they basically stated that they would not give medical direction on patient refusal. And then after we had some dialogue with them through Wremac and had someone who was involved in EMS law sort of educate them, it was understood that they would be providing that. So I think that across the board is a good thing to say. And also as you move forward with the meetings at OSHI, but just so we have something consistent. It wouldn't even be a bad idea to maybe come up with some sort of a consensus statement, not really a policy, but just a statement of where we stand, and maybe get some legal input on it so that we can refer to that.
That's a good thought too. All right, I'll kind of mull that over a little bit and see if I can draft something that we can maybe email around to the physicians on Wremac and the regional chairs, and then we'll go from there. But I agree. My intent is to make this a universal approach and not agency or hospital specific. All right. Item number 5. CLI and CIC is Wremac presented. Where did that go?
That's
Okay.
So this is an item that was added on here, which is lessons learned from some experiences in terms of designating preceptors. Our existing policy regarding Wremac preceptors is that you either have to take the Wremac preceptor course, which is offered by the program agency, in which case you have to be approved by your medical director to take that course, or CLIs and CICs, they are certified lab instructors or instructor coordinators for New York State. They are essentially waived from having to take the CLI or the Wremac preceptor course. The intent when that portion of the policy was crafted within this group was that CLIs and CICs would notify the program agencies their desire to be Wremac preceptors. And just by the nature of our system, it's very reasonable to understand why it didn't exactly happen that way. And so there was a lot of confusion that has kind of gone, at least in our region, in the Wyoming region, for a number of years, because as people have become CLIs or CICs, and it becomes skill time, and they say, well, I'm not on the preceptor list, can I do this? It seems to be a pretty common theme that we're hearing about. And the way you get on that list is you have to contact the program agency and say, hey, I want to be a preceptor, because we have to note at the portal that way, which is what creates the list. So long story short, the CLI and CIC class teaches you about how to teach lab sessions and teach students in classes. The Wremac preceptor course does not teach you that. It teaches you how to administrate the credentialing program within this region, which is not something that is contained within the CLI and the CIC class. What we intended to happen when this policy originally came out in 2013 was a nice gesture for CLIs and CICs. I don't think any harm has been done. I don't think there's tremendous confusion out there. But I think a better way to do this would be to have CLIs and CICs take maybe a condensed version of the preceptor course, which one of the ideas that is being kicked around would be an LMS-based system where they could get kind of the nuts and bolts of what credentialing is about, so it's not entirely foreign to them. I think the thing we have to respect about this is that if you're a CLI or a CIC, You've probably been around for a little while. You've probably been through the credentialing process, but you maybe not have been in a position where you have to be a bit of an administrator or have people asking you questions about this. And while we have some very, very high functioning CLIs and CICs who are administrators in the system and understand this, they're kind of like the exceptions to this. I mean, they would still wanted to do it, but people who are just getting into the instructing scene and now they're also being hit with the precepting piece of it, I think we're probably doing a little bit of a disservice by not having them take this program, or at least in a, an abridged version of it, once they become CLIs and CICs. The tie-in to that is that it would also make the program agencies aware of which of these CLIs and CICs are desiring to be preceptors, and it would give them a certificate, we would be aware of it, we can update our records, and it creates a more cohesive system. So what I'm proposing, and I did very, very recently, as of yesterday afternoon, bounce this off our counterparts here, but what I'm proposing is that we would remove the requirement, the waiver requirement for CLIs and CICs. Not immediately. Let's come up with a solution, maybe between the three of us, how we can tackle this. If we can do it with an LMS, get it live, make it happen, you know, and get it live. Once we have that, bring it back. But this is more of a conceptually, do you agree with where we're heading with this and what the request is, rather? I don't know if you guys have anything to add.
Yeah, I mean, as I shared with Scott, we actually have been filling out an application with another CLI or CNC and stuff to get their medical director sign off, so that's how we know. And then usually what I will do is contact them and I say, I understand, but I'd still like to go over the policies and procedures with you, so I do an abridged version. So I do think it's important. A lot of them don't know how to fill out the paperwork and those types of things. So again, we are kind of already doing it, and it would be helpful if we did have some kind of LMS where we could sign them to and have it, you know, come back to us.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, that would be a great opportunity to roll out, you know, an abridged course and then the full course via the LMS. And then after we give everybody that's currently kind of been grandfathered by the policy, you know, a chance to beta test the course / complete it.
Sure.
Then maybe at that point, I agree, maybe roll back that exception to the policy at that point once it's up and available. That way we're not really doing anybody that really is interested in doing a good job and trying to learn out of the service by pulling the rug out from under.
No, I'm in agreement. With all that.
Great. Any other thoughts? Otherwise, we'll plan to
We
do
all
that.
agreed on something, so thank you.
What's that?
I said we all agreed on something, so make that get knocked
That'll be
down.
the theme of the leadership retreat.
There you go.
Is there a spot?
It can be. We haven't picked
But I will be there.
I think we have like an 8-way couples massage.
Oh, boy. Oh, boy.
Alright, so, I'm sorry. So, no potential projectile. Alright. Any other thoughts on that from the peanut gallery? Both in person and virtual? Okay. Any other new business before we move on to approvals and talk about winding the meeting down?
In my homework thing, I failed to mention in talking about the CMAC and the semester report, there was a EMS workforce shortage in New York State document that was put out by a subcommittee of the CMAC. It came out, was discussed and presented there. It's got some interesting data across the state about workforce shortages, delays in calls, salary comparisons, and things like that. This has been in the works for maybe a year or two now. But there is some interesting data there. I think the corporate agencies all have copies and can probably send it out if they haven't already. I think somebody may have already circulated it. But as agencies are looking, or regions are looking at shortages and how to address them, I think there's some valuable data in there that we should be aware of.
Yeah.
But just kind of an FYI that it exists.
Thank you. Any other new business?
Yeah, so at the last Wremac meeting, we were not able to pin down the name date.
Yes. We were looking at either the 6th or the 27th. The 27th would put us pretty close to the June meeting. The 6th would not.
So the reason why we didn't is because of the state meeting, which no longer occurs in Maine. So I think that opens our dates up a little.
Well,
alternate CMS week.
GMS week, the 20th. Yeah.
That's the,
So I think we do it the week before.
Yeah, what about the 13th? Any big conflicts anyone's aware of on the 13th of May?
we could meet in April or June and just get rid of the election.
Fine with me too.
I would just throw it out there.
That's fine with me too. That was an option we talked about last time.
We have our next state council meeting March 7th.
March 10th.
So I mean, if we did it after that, we tend to have more information. And we have stuff to talk about.
Yeah, let's do the 13th.
March, what, May? We're
May,
talking about
May 13th.
Okay. It was 'cause we didn't accept So, we have March 18th, May 13th, and that one's in the Big Lakes region. Correct. And then June 17th, Twin City, and then September 16th at us, and then November 8th. I will update first.
Okay.
Big Lakes.
Yeah, big
Big
one.
Lakes region,
Days,
to be
days of
determined.
mine.
Are you gonna do it at the training center?
I'm gonna reach out, hopefully the date's still available. That's how much
All right. Any other new business? Okay, there are 4 approvals, pending approval, blood glucose for independence, EPCR for Corfu, CPAP for Stafford Fire, and public access notification for Flexo Transparent, which is a cool name.
I'll make a motion to approve them all.
In mass?
Mass.
All right. Thank you. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Excellent, they are all approved. If there's no new business in front of the committee, I'll entertain the motion to adjourn.